The security alarm shrieked through Data Vault Industries' 42nd floor as Sarah Chen frantically typed at her workstation. Her fingers trembled over the keyboard while her colleagues rushed past, evacuating the building. A massive data breach had just occurred, and someone needed to manually reset 10,000 access codes before the hackers could exploit the vulnerable system further. "Sarah, get out of here!" shouted Marcus Williams, the head of IT security, as he grabbed his laptop bag. "The building's being evacuated!" But Sarah couldn't move. She stared at her screen, watching lines of compromised security codes scroll past. Each one represented a client's most sensitive information, and she knew that within hours these could be sold on the dark web if they weren't changed immediately. "I can fix this," she whispered to herself, her photographic memory already cataloging the patterns she was seeing. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 months earlier, Sarah had walked into Data Vault Industries as their newest junior cybersecurity analyst, armed with a computer science degree from a state university and an unusual gift she'd learned to hide. While other people forgot phone numbers minutes after hearing them, Sarah could recall every detail of everything she'd ever read, seen, or heard with perfect clarity. She'd discovered this ability in elementary school when she accidentally recited her teacher's entire lesson word for word after missing class due to illness. Instead of praise, she'd received strange looks and whispered comments about being weird or showing off. By high school, she'd learned to downplay her abilities, giving deliberately imperfect answers on tests and pretending to study like everyone else. At Data Vault, she'd hoped things would be different. The company specialized in cybersecurity for Fortune 500 companies, protecting everything from financial records to government contracts. She thought her unique memory would finally be an asset rather than something to hide. On her first day, Sarah met her supervisor, Derek Thompson, a sharp-dressed man in his early 30s who'd made it clear he wasn't impressed with her credentials. "State school, huh?" he'd said, barely glancing at her resume. "Well, I suppose we all start somewhere. You'll be working under Jennifer Martinez. Try not to slow her down too much." Jennifer had been kinder, but equally skeptical. A brilliant analyst with an MIT degree, she'd worked at Data Vault for 5 years and had developed most of their current security protocols. "Don't take Derek personally," Jennifer had whispered during Sarah's first week. "He's just protective of the team. We've had some disappointing hires lately." Sarah had thrown herself into the work, quickly mastering their systems and protocols. But whenever she demonstrated her abilities, her colleagues seemed uncomfortable rather than impressed. During her second week, Sarah had noticed a potential vulnerability in their client portal and suggested a fix. Derek had dismissed it without investigation. "Thanks for the input, Sarah, but we've been doing this a lot longer than you have," he'd said with a patronizing smile. "Why don't you focus on the basic security scans I assigned you?" 2 weeks later, a minor breach occurred through the exact vulnerability Sarah had identified. Derek quietly implemented her suggested fix, but never acknowledged her contribution. This pattern continued for months. Sarah would spot problems, suggest solutions, and watch as her ideas were either ignored or implemented without credit. She began to suspect that Derek deliberately excluded her from important projects. The breaking point came during a team meeting about upgrading their authentication systems. Sarah had spent weeks studying the proposals and had identified several critical flaws in the recommended approach. "I think there might be some issues with the Peterson Group's proposal," she'd said during the meeting, raising her hand tentatively. Derek had rolled his eyes. "Sarah, these are industry leaders. I think they know a bit more about cybersecurity than someone who's been here 3 months. But if you look at lines 2847 through 2851 of their technical specifications—" "You memorized 3,000 pages of technical specs?" interrupted Jennifer, her voice tinged with disbelief. The room had fallen silent. Sarah felt every pair of eyes on her, some skeptical, others amused. I have a good memory for details," Sarah had said quietly. Derek had laughed, a sound that made Sarah's cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Right. Well, unless you can recite phone books too, let's stick to normal human capabilities in our planning." The meeting had continued without her input, and Sarah had learned later that the team had indeed chosen the Peterson Group's proposal despite her warnings. As the weeks passed, Sarah began to notice the complex dynamics within her team. Derek seemed particularly close to Amanda Foster, a senior analyst who'd joined the company around the same time as him. They often worked late together, shared inside jokes, and Amanda frequently echoed Derek's opinions in meetings. Jennifer, meanwhile, appeared increasingly frustrated with Derek's management style but kept her concerns private. She'd been passed over for Derek's promotion despite having more experience and better technical skills. "He plays politics better than the rest of us," Jennifer had confided to Sarah one evening as they worked late. "Amanda's good at it too. They know how to make themselves look indispensable to upper management." Sarah had also begun to notice that certain high-security projects were handled exclusively by Derek and Amanda, even when other team members might be better qualified. These projects often involved the most prestigious clients and came with significant bonuses. The company's CEO, Robert Blackwood, was a demanding perfectionist who'd built Data Vault from nothing into a billion-dollar company. He trusted Derek implicitly, largely because Derek always delivered results and never admitted to problems unless he already had solutions. Sarah suspected that Derek might be taking credit for other people's work, but she couldn't prove it. She'd started keeping detailed notes of her suggestions and observations, documenting the times when her ideas were implemented without acknowledgement. Everything changed on a Friday afternoon in November. Sarah was reviewing security logs when she noticed unusual access patterns from multiple client accounts. The intrusion was subtle, almost elegant in its approach, but her memory allowed her to spot the tiny anomalies that others would miss. She immediately reported her findings to Derek, explaining how the attackers had exploited a vulnerability in the Peterson Group's authentication system, the same system she'd warned about months earlier. Derek's face had gone pale as he reviewed her evidence. "How bad is it?" "They've accessed preliminary data from about 50 clients, but they haven't penetrated the core systems yet," Sarah had explained. "If we act now, we can contain it." But Derek had made a crucial decision that would change everything. Instead of immediately reporting the breach to management and clients, he'd decided to try handling it quietly to avoid embarrassing the company. "We can fix this internally," he'd told the team. "No need to panic everyone over what might turn out to be nothing." Amanda had supported his decision, arguing that a public disclosure would damage Data Vault's reputation unnecessarily. Jennifer had looked skeptical but hadn't spoken up. Sarah had felt a growing sense of dread as she watched Derek and Amanda work to contain the breach without following proper protocols. They were more concerned with covering their tracks than securing the systems. By the time Sarah arrived at work Monday morning, the situation had deteriorated catastrophically. The attackers had used their initial access to plant deeper intrusions, and now they were systematically extracting data from Data Vault's most sensitive clients. The security alarms were blaring, and CEO Robert Blackwood was furious. He'd discovered the breach when a client called to report suspicious activity in their accounts. "Who knew about this and when?" Blackwood had demanded during an emergency meeting. Derek had thrown Sarah under the bus without hesitation. Sarah identified some anomalies on Friday, but she said they weren't serious. "We're investigating whether her inexperience led to a misassessment of the threat level." Sarah had stared at him in shock. Amanda had nodded supportively, while Jennifer had looked uncomfortable but remained silent. "I specifically warned that this was a serious breach," Sarah had protested. "I recommended immediate disclosure and containment protocols." "That's not how I remember it," Derek had replied smoothly. "But regardless, we need to focus on solutions now, not blame." As the meeting continued, Sarah realized that Derek was positioning himself as the hero who would save the company, while painting her as the scapegoat whose incompetence had allowed the breach to worsen. But Sarah had something Derek didn't know about, something that would change everything. She had a perfect memory of every access code, every security protocol, and every system configuration in the entire Data Vault network. And she was about to prove that her weird memory was about to become their salvation. The real story was just beginning. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The emergency meeting had ended with CEO Robert Blackwood giving Derek's team exactly 72 hours to contain the breach before he'd be forced to notify federal authorities and Data Vault's insurance company. The implications were catastrophic: potential lawsuits, regulatory fines, and the complete destruction of the company's reputation. As her colleagues dispersed to their various damage control tasks, Sarah remained seated at the conference table, her mind racing through possibilities. Derek had assigned her to, quote, basic system monitoring, essentially sidelining her while he and Amanda took charge of the critical response efforts. But Sarah had other plans. That evening, she waited until the office was nearly empty before returning to her workstation. Using her standard access credentials, she began what appeared to be routine security scanning. In reality, she was implementing a strategy that would either save Data Vault or end her career permanently. Her photographic memory had cataloged every security protocol, every system architecture diagram, and every access code she'd encountered during her 3 months at the company. More importantly, she'd noticed patterns that others had missed, subtle correlations between user behaviors, system vulnerabilities, and the attacker's methodology. The hackers weren't just stealing data randomly, they were systematically targeting specific client accounts based on a sophisticated understanding of Data Vault's internal structure. Someone had provided them with inside information. Sarah began cross-referencing access logs with employee schedules, client communications, and system modifications over the past 6 months. Her memory allowed her to process vast amounts of data simultaneously, connecting dots that would take others weeks to identify. By midnight, she'd uncovered something disturbing. The initial vulnerability exploited by the hackers hadn't been an oversight. It had been deliberately created. Someone at Data Vault was collaborating with the attackers. The next morning, Sarah arrived early to find Derek and Amanda already in deep discussion near the coffee machine. Their conversation stopped abruptly when they noticed her. "Sarah, I thought I told you to focus on monitoring," Derek said, his tone sharp. "We don't need you complicating things with your theories." "I've been monitoring," Sarah replied carefully. "I noticed some interesting patterns in the breach timeline." Amanda laughed dismissively. "Patterns? Sarah, this isn't a puzzle game. Real cybersecurity requires experience and expertise, not memorizing random details." But Sarah had learned something valuable from months of being underestimated. Sometimes the best strategy was to let people continue underestimating you. "You're probably right," she said, adopting the meek tone that had become her default around Derek. "I'll stick to the basic scans." What Derek and Amanda didn't know was that Sarah had spent the night developing a comprehensive counter-strategy. She'd identified exactly how the attackers were maintaining their access, mapped their data extraction routes, and discovered the insider who was feeding them information. More importantly, she'd realized that the company's salvation lay in a capability that no one, not even Derek, fully understood. Data Vault's core security system required manual authentication codes for critical functions. These codes were randomly generated and changed frequently to prevent unauthorized access. But Sarah had memorized every single code generated over the past 3 months, all 10,847 of them. Over the next 24 hours, Sarah carefully began implementing her plan. She started by subtly adjusting system configurations during her monitoring duties, creating backdoors that only she could access. To anyone reviewing her work, it would appear she was simply running standard diagnostic routines. Meanwhile, Derek and Amanda's official response efforts were failing spectacularly. Their attempt to negotiate with the hackers had only emboldened them, and their technical solutions were easily circumvented. The attackers seemed to anticipate every move they made. "This is impossible," Derek complained during Wednesday morning's status meeting. "Every time we close one access point, they open 2 more. It's like they know our systems better than we do." Sarah sat quietly in the corner, taking notes and observing. She'd noticed that Amanda always seemed remarkably calm during these crisis meetings, almost as if she knew something the others didn't. That afternoon, Sarah's suspicions were confirmed. While monitoring network traffic, she detected a subtle data transmission from Amanda's workstation to an external server. The transmission occurred during a brief window when Amanda thought no one was watching. Sarah's memory immediately identified the destination server. It matched one of the addresses she'd seen in the hackers' communication logs. Amanda Foster wasn't just failing to stop the breach, she was actively facilitating it. The revelation was both shocking and oddly satisfying. Sarah had always sensed something off about Amanda's relationship with Derek, but she'd assumed it was just office politics. Now she understood that Amanda had been playing a much deeper game. But rather than immediately exposing Amanda, Sarah decided to use this knowledge strategically. She began documenting Amanda's communications while simultaneously preparing her own countermove. On Wednesday evening, as the deadline approached, CEO Blackwood called another emergency meeting. The breach had worsened, and DataVault was now facing the possibility of complete collapse. "I need solutions, not excuses," Blackwood announced grimly. "If we can't contain this by tomorrow morning, I'm calling the FBI and our insurance company. This company will not survive that kind of scrutiny." Derek looked exhausted and desperate. "Sir, we're doing everything possible. The attackers are just more sophisticated than anything we've dealt with before." "Then maybe we need different expertise," Blackwood replied. "I'm bringing in outside consultants." Sarah saw her opening. "Mr. Blackwood, before you do that, I might have a solution." The room fell silent. Derek's face darkened with irritation. "Sarah, this isn't the time for—" "Let her speak," Blackwood interrupted, his desperation evident. Sarah stood up, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "I've been analyzing the attack patterns, and I believe I can isolate and neutralize their access points. But it would require manually resetting every compromised authentication code in our system." Amanda scoffed. "That's impossible. We're talking about thousands of codes. It would take weeks to generate and implement new ones." "Not if someone already knew them," Sarah replied quietly. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Derek shook his head dismissively. "Sarah, even if you could somehow remember a few dozen codes, we're talking about the entire system. It's not humanly possible." Sarah looked directly at CEO Blackwood. "Sir, give me access to the master authentication terminal, and I'll prove it's possible." Blackwood studied her for a long moment. "You're saying you can remember every access code in our system?" "Every single one generated in the past 3 months," Sarah confirmed. "All 10,847 of them." The silence that followed was deafening. Derek's face had gone pale, while Amanda looked genuinely shocked for the first time since Sarah had known her. That's not possible," Jennifer whispered. Sarah had spent months hiding her abilities, but now everything depended on revealing them. "Mr. Blackwood, your personal access code for the executive server, generated last Tuesday at 3:47 p.m., was Alpha 77 Charlie 9 Delta 22. Your backup code, generated the same day at 4:15 p.m., was Bravo 3 Echo 55 Alpha 89. Blackwood's eyes widened. Those codes were classified at the highest level, known only to him and the system itself. How could you possibly know that? "Because I have an eidetic memory," Sarah said simply. "I remember everything I've ever seen, heard, or read. Every access code, every system configuration, every security protocol in this company is stored perfectly in my mind." Derek stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Even if she somehow hacked those codes, there's no way." "I didn't hack anything," Sarah interrupted, her confidence growing. "I can recite every code generated since I started working here, in chronological order, along with the exact time and user authentication that created each one." She began rattling off a series of codes, complete with timestamps and user IDs. Each one was verified instantly by Blackwood's tablet as he cross-referenced her claims with the official logs. After the 10th perfect match, Blackwood held up his hand. "Stop. That's extraordinary." Amanda had been growing increasingly agitated during Sarah's demonstration. "Even if she has some kind of photographic memory, that doesn't mean she can fix this mess. The attackers aren't just using old codes. They're generating new ones." Sarah smiled for the first time all week. "Actually, they're not. They're using a rotating algorithm based on the Peterson Group's authentication system, the same system I warned about 3 months ago. The system that Derek insisted on implementing despite my objections." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Derek's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You don't know what you're talking about," he snapped. "The Peterson system was thoroughly vetted by industry experts." "Experts who missed the recursive vulnerability in their code architecture," Sarah replied calmly. "The same vulnerability that's allowing the attackers to predict and generate our future authentication codes." She turned to Blackwood. "Sir, if you give me administrative access, I can not only reset every compromised code, but I can also close the vulnerability permanently. The entire process will take approximately 6 hours." Blackwood looked around the room at his exhausted, defeated team, then back at Sarah. "And if you're wrong, then you can fire me and proceed with your original plan," Sarah said. But if I'm right, Data Vault will not only survive this attack, will emerge stronger than before. The CEO made his decision. Do it. As Sarah moved toward the master terminal, she caught a glimpse of Amanda's face. What she saw there wasn't just surprise or skepticism, it was fear. And Sarah knew that her real battle was just beginning. The master authentication terminal hummed to life as Sarah's fingers moved across the keyboard with mechanical precision. Within the first hour, she had reset 847 access codes, each one flowing from her memory with perfect accuracy. The room was filled with Data Vault's senior staff, all watching in stunned silence as she worked. Code sequence 2134, Foxtrot 8 Delta 77 Whiskey 34, generated Monday, September 18, 11:23 a.m. for client portal subsection C-7, Sarah recited without pausing her typing. Reset to Echo 9 Alpha 25 Uniform 68. CEO Blackwood stood behind her, tablet in hand, verifying each code against the official logs. Every single one was perfect. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Helen Reeves, Data Vault's chief technology officer, who had arrived from the company's Boston headquarters on an emergency flight. "No human being can process information at this speed while maintaining perfect accuracy." But their amazement was interrupted by the arrival of someone who would complicate everything. Agent Marcus Rodriguez from the FBI's Cybercrime Division stepped into the room, flanked by two junior agents. His presence immediately shifted the atmosphere from wonder to tension. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm here about the data breach you reported to federal authorities," Rodriguez announced, his eyes scanning the room before settling on Sarah. "I understand you have an employee attempting some kind of manual intervention?" Blackwood looked confused. "I haven't contacted federal authorities yet. We agreed to wait until—" "Someone called our tip line 2 hours ago," Rodriguez interrupted, pulling out a tablet. "Anonymous report claiming Data Vault was covering up a massive breach and endangering national security. Several of your clients have government contracts." Sarah's typing never faltered, but she felt Amanda's eyes boring into the back of her head. The pieces clicked into place immediately. Amanda had called the FBI to force a crisis that would destroy any chance of Sarah's solution working. Derek stepped forward, his politician's instincts kicking in. "Agent Rodriguez, I'm Derek Thompson, head of IT security. We have the situation under control. This is just a precautionary measure." "Precautionary?" Rodriguez's eyebrow raised. "According to our information, hackers have accessed classified defense contractor data. That makes this a matter of national security." Dr. Reeves moved closer to Sarah's workstation. "Agent Rodriguez, what you're witnessing here is extraordinary. This young woman appears to have memorized our entire authentication database. She's manually resetting thousands of security codes." "Memorized?" Rodriguez looked skeptical. "Miss, what's your name?" "Sarah Chen," she replied without stopping her work. "Code sequence 3891. Hotel 2 Bravo 94 Lima 71. Generated October 3, 2:17 p.m. for Executive Access Tier 3. Reset to Victor 5 Charlie 83 Romeo 96. Rodriguez watched as Blackwood confirmed the accuracy on his tablet. "Ms. Chen, I need you to stop what you're doing and step away from the terminal." "Agent Rodriguez," Blackwood interjected, "she's our best hope of containing this breach. In just 1 hour, she secured more access points than my entire team managed in 2 days." "That's exactly what concerns me," Rodriguez replied. "No legitimate employee should have this kind of system access or knowledge. For all we know, she could be the insider who facilitated this breach in the first place." The accusation sent a chill through the room. Sarah finally stopped typing and turned around, her calm demeanor masking the fury building inside her. "Agent Rodriguez, I understand your suspicion, but I can prove my innocence," Sarah said. "I've been documenting everything I've discovered about this breach, including the identity of the actual insider." Amanda's face went pale. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that someone in this room has been feeding information to the hackers," Sarah replied, her voice steady but her eyes locked on Amanda. "Someone who knew exactly when our response efforts were planned, who had access to our countermeasures, and who made sure the attackers stayed one step ahead." Jennifer gasped. "You're saying there's a traitor here?" Dr. Reeves leaned forward intently. Ms. Chen, that's a serious accusation. Do you have evidence? Sarah turned back to her terminal and pulled up a secondary window. At 3:47 p.m. yesterday, someone transmitted encrypted data packets from Workstation 15B to an external server registered in Eastern Europe. The transmission occurred during a 15-minute window when most staff were in the emergency meeting. She displayed the network logs on the main screen. Workstation 15B is assigned to Amanda Foster. All eyes turned to Amanda, whose confident facade was beginning to crack. That could be explained by routine system updates or... The data packets contained next week's security rotation schedules and the preliminary access codes for our emergency protocols, Sarah continued relentlessly. Information that hasn't been shared with anyone outside this room. Agent Rodriguez immediately became alert. Miss Foster, I'm going to need you to come with us for questioning. This is ridiculous, Amanda protested. Sarah is obviously trying to deflect blame from herself. She's the one with impossible access to all these codes. Derek jumped to Amanda's defense. Agent Rodriguez, Sarah is a junior employee with minimal security clearance. Amanda has been with the company for 3 years and has an impeccable record. But Dr. Reeves was studying the data Sarah had displayed. Actually, Derek, this evidence is quite compelling. Sarah, how did you detect these transmissions? I've been monitoring all network traffic since the breach began, Sarah explained. My memory allows me to identify patterns and anomalies that automated systems might miss. Rodriguez's radio crackled with an incoming message. After a brief conversation, he turned back to the group with a grim expression. We just intercepted communications between the hacker group and someone using the codename Nightingale. The communication logs show contact dating back 6 months, well before this current breach. Amanda's defiance finally crumbled. You don't understand. They threatened me. They said they'd destroy my family if I didn't cooperate. So you decided to destroy the company instead? Jennifer asked incredulously. I thought I could control it, Amanda said, tears streaming down her face. They promised it would just be minor data, nothing critical, but they kept demanding more, and when I tried to stop... When you tried to stop, they escalated to a full breach, Sarah finished. And you called the FBI, hoping that federal intervention would shut down any investigation that might expose your involvement. Rodriguez gestured to his agents. Ms. Foster, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit cybercrime in violation of federal computer fraud statutes. As Amanda was led away in handcuffs, the room fell into stunned silence. Derek looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. But Dr. Reeves was focused on something else entirely. Sarah, you said you've memorized our entire authentication database, every single code? Yes, ma'am. 10,847 codes as of this morning, plus the 847 new ones I've generated in the past hour. And you can recall them all perfectly? Perfect recall is the nature of eidetic memory, Sarah confirmed. I can also cross-reference them with usage patterns, security events, and user behaviors to identify vulnerabilities or anomalies. Dr. Reeves exchanged glances with CEO Blackwood. Sarah, what you're describing isn't just unusual, it's revolutionary. Do you realize what this could mean for cybersecurity? Agent Rodriguez, who had remained in the room, looked intrigued despite himself. Ms. Chen, the FBI has been tracking this hacker group for months. They've hit 17 companies so far, and until now, they've never left a trace. Your ability to detect their methods could be invaluable. But as the scope of Sarah's capabilities became clear, new complications began to emerge. Derek, realizing that his authority was crumbling, made a desperate play. Wait, he announced loudly. Before we get carried away, I think we need to consider the security implications of Sarah's condition. Someone with perfect memory of all our security protocols could be an incredible asset, or an incredible threat. Dr. Reeves frowned. What are you suggesting, Derek? I'm suggesting that we need to be very careful about who we trust with this level of access, Derek replied. Sarah may have helped expose Amanda, but that could just be a sophisticated way of deflecting suspicion from herself. That's absurd, Jennifer protested. Sarah was the one who warned us about the Peterson vulnerability in the first place. Which she could have done to establish credibility for later exploitation, Derek countered. Think about it. Someone with her memory capabilities would be the perfect sleeper agent. Sarah felt the mood in the room shift as Derek's words took hold. Even Agent Rodriguez was looking at her with renewed suspicion. "Sarah," Dr. Reeves said carefully, "Derek raises a valid concern. Your abilities are extraordinary, but they also represent a potential security risk." The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. After being dismissed and underestimated for months, she was now being viewed as too capable, too dangerous to trust. But she had one more card to play. "Dr. Reeves, if I were working with the hackers, why would I expose their inside contact? Why would I risk everything to save a company that's never appreciated my contributions?" "Maybe because your real goal isn't to help the hackers steal data," Agent Rodriguez suggested. "Maybe it's to position yourself as indispensable, so you can gain access to even more sensitive information." Sarah looked around the room at the faces that had gone from amazed to suspicious in the span of minutes. She realized that her extraordinary abilities had made her both invaluable and untouchable, a combination that terrified people more than it impressed them. But as the skepticism mounted, the building's security alarms began blaring again. Fresh breach alerts flashed across every monitor in the room. The hackers had launched a new attack, more sophisticated than anything they'd attempted before, and with Amanda's arrest, they had nothing left to lose. The new attack was unlike anything DataVault had faced before. Instead of targeting individual client accounts, the hackers were attempting to corrupt the core infrastructure itself. Red warning lights flashed across the main display as system after system went offline. "They're trying to crash our entire network," Dr. Reeves announced, her voice tight with concern. "If they succeed, we'll lose everything: client data, backup systems, even our basic operational capabilities." Sarah watched the cascade of failures with growing alarm. The hackers weren't just stealing information anymore, they were trying to destroy DataVault completely. Amanda's arrest had apparently triggered a scorched earth response. "How much time do we have?" CEO Blackwood demanded. "At this rate of degradation, maybe 90 minutes before total system collapse," Dr. Reeves replied. Agent Rodriguez was coordinating with his team via radio, while Derek frantically attempted damage control at his workstation. But Sarah could see that their conventional approaches were failing. The hackers had adapted to DataVault's standard security measures. "I need to access the core infrastructure controls," Sarah announced, moving toward the master terminal. "Absolutely not," Derek snapped, spinning around from his workstation. "Agent Rodriguez, this is exactly what I was warned about. She's using this crisis to gain access to our most sensitive systems." "Derek's right," Agent Rodriguez said, stepping between Sarah and the terminal. "Ms. Chen, until we can verify your security clearance and conduct a proper background investigation, you're not authorized for infrastructure access." "Then enjoy watching your entire company collapse," Sarah replied with unexpected sharpness. "Because while you're playing politics, those hackers are implementing a systematic destruction protocol that will wipe out 15 years of work." Dr. Reeves looked up from her diagnostic screens. "Sarah, what kind of destruction protocol?" "They're using a recursive deletion algorithm disguised as routine maintenance commands," Sarah explained. "It targets backup systems first, then moves to active databases, and finally corrupts the boot sequences of critical servers. The beauty of it is that by the time you notice what's happening, it's too late to stop." "How could you possibly know their specific methodology?" Agent Rodriguez asked suspiciously. "Because I recognize the code structure," Sarah said. "It's based on a theoretical attack model published in a cybersecurity journal 3 years ago. The paper was written by Dr. Michael Vasquez at Carnegie Mellon." Jennifer looked up from her workstation. "Sarah, how do you remember a 3-year-old academic paper?" "I remember everything I've ever read," Sarah said simply, "including the 17 different variations of this attack that Dr. Vasquez proposed in his follow-up research." Dr. Reeves was staring at Sarah with undisguised fascination. "You're saying you've memorized not just our security codes, but academic literature spanning multiple years?" "Academic literature, technical manuals, patent filings, court cases, news articles. Anything I've encountered," Sarah confirmed. "It's not selective. My brain doesn't distinguish between important and trivial information." Agent Rodriguez's radio crackled with urgent communication. After a brief exchange, he turned back to the group with a troubled expression. "We just received intelligence that this hacker group has connections to a foreign intelligence service. This isn't just corporate espionage. It's a state-sponsored attack on American infrastructure. The revelation sent a chill through the room. What had started as a data breach was now a matter of national security. Agent Rodriguez, Dr. Reeves said urgently, if Sarah is right about this destruction protocol, we're facing a complete loss of critical data within the next hour. Some of our clients include defense contractors with classified projects. Which is exactly why we can't trust someone with unexplained access to all this information, Derek insisted. For all we know, Sarah could be a foreign asset planted specifically for this purpose. Sarah felt her temper finally snap. Derek, I've spent 3 months watching you ignore my warnings, steal credit for my work, and undermine my contributions at every turn. The Peterson Group vulnerability that started this entire mess? I identified it in my second week, and you dismissed it as inexperience. That's not, Derek began. I have a perfect recall of our conversation, Sarah interrupted. October 12th, 3:17 p.m., Conference Room B. You said, and I quote, "Thanks for the input, Sarah, but we've been doing this a lot longer than you have. Why don't you focus on the basic security scans I assigned you?" Jennifer nodded slowly. She's right. I remember that meeting. Sarah tried to warn us about vulnerabilities in the Peterson system. One warning doesn't prove anything, Derek protested. Besides, even if she identified a potential problem, she didn't have the experience to properly assess. I provided a detailed technical analysis including 17 specific attack vectors and suggested countermeasures, Sarah said coldly. You filed my report without reading it. Dr. Reeves was accessing archived files on her tablet. Derek, I'm looking at Sarah's original vulnerability assessment from October. This is extraordinary work. Comprehensive, technically sophisticated, and unfortunately prophetic. Agent Rodriguez was also reviewing files on his device. Ms. Chen, according to your personnel records, you graduated summa cum laude with a computer science degree and had stellar academic references. Why didn't anyone take your assessment seriously? Because she's weird, Derek blurted out, then immediately looked like he regretted his honesty. Weird how? Dr. Reeves asked sharply. She remembers everything, conversations, technical specifications, personal details. It makes people uncomfortable. You can't have a normal interaction with someone who recalls every word you've ever said to them. The room fell silent as the implications of Derek's admission sank in. Sarah had been marginalized not because she lacked competence, but because her competence made others feel inadequate. Let me understand this, Agent Rodriguez said slowly. You ignored warnings from your most capable analyst because her abilities made you uncomfortable. It's not that simple, Derek stammered. Management requires team cohesion. Someone who makes others feel inadequate disrupts group dynamics. So you decided to suppress her contributions rather than leverage her unique capabilities, Dr. Reeves observed with barely concealed disgust. Meanwhile, the system alerts were becoming more urgent. Critical servers were failing faster than anticipated. Dr. Reeves, Sarah said, we're running out of time for philosophical discussions. That destruction protocol will reach the core databases in approximately 43 minutes. After that, recovery becomes impossible. What would you need to do to stop it? Dr. Reeves asked. Full administrative access to the infrastructure control systems and authorization to implement emergency protocols, Sarah replied. I can trace the malicious code and neutralize it, but only if I can access the affected systems directly. Agent Rodriguez looked torn between protocol and pragmatism. Dr. Reeves, what's your assessment? Agent Rodriguez, I've been in cybersecurity for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone with Sarah's capabilities. More importantly, I've never seen anyone demonstrate this level of system understanding while under extreme pressure. But what if Derek is right about the security risk? Rodriguez asked. Dr. Reeves looked directly at Sarah. Sarah, if we give you this access, you'll essentially have the ability to control every aspect of DataVault's operations. That's more power than any single individual should have. You're right, Sarah agreed. It is too much power for one person. That's why I'm proposing that Jennifer monitor my every action in real time, and that Dr. Reeves review each command before I execute it. Jennifer looked surprised. You want me to oversee your work? Jennifer, you've been the most competent analyst on this team since I arrived, Sarah said. You understand our systems better than anyone except possibly Dr. Reeves. If I'm doing anything suspicious or dangerous, you'll catch it. Derek looked panicked. You can't seriously be considering this. Sarah could be playing an elaborate long game. Derek, Dr. Reeves interrupted, in the past 4 hours, Sarah has exposed a traitor, demonstrated perfect recall of our security systems, and provided the most accurate threat assessment we've received. What exactly has your approach accomplished? The question hung in the air like an indictment. Derek's face flushed with anger and humiliation. Agent Rodriguez made his decision. Dr. Reeves authorized limited infrastructure access under the supervision protocol Sarah suggested. But I want every keystroke logged and 2 federal agents monitoring the entire process. As Sarah moved toward the master terminal, Derek made one final desperate play. If you do this, you're all making a terrible mistake, he announced loudly. And when this company falls apart because you trusted the wrong person, remember that I warned you. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. I'm calling corporate headquarters to report what's happening here. Someone needs to document that I advised against this course of action. Derek, Dr. Reeves called after him, where are you going? To protect my career, Derek replied bitterly. Unlike the rest of you, I'm not willing to bet everything on a junior analyst with a questionable background. The doors slammed behind him, leaving an uncomfortable silence in his wake. Well, Agent Rodriguez said dryly, that was illuminating. Sarah settled at the master terminal, with Jennifer taking the adjacent workstation. Dr. Reeves positioned herself where she could review every command, while 2 federal agents flanked them with recording equipment. Sarah, Dr. Reeves said quietly, I hope you understand what's at stake here. If you're wrong about this, it's not just your career that's over, it's potentially the entire company. Sarah's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Dr. Reeves, I've been wrong about a lot of things in my life, but I've never been wrong about code. She began typing, her movements swift and precise. On the monitors around them, lines of complex programming began to appear as Sarah traced the hacker's destruction protocol through Data Vault's systems. But as she worked, none of them noticed the figure watching from the security camera feed in a different building across the city, someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment to strike. Sarah's fingers moved across the keyboard with mechanical precision as lines of malicious code appeared on the main display. The destruction protocol was even more sophisticated than she'd initially realized, a masterpiece of digital sabotage that was systematically dismantling Data Vault's infrastructure from within. There, she said, highlighting a section of code, the primary trigger is embedded in what appears to be a routine system maintenance function. Every time our automated backup process runs, it executes another phase of the destruction sequence. Jennifer leaned closer to her monitor. That's diabolical. Our own security protocols are being used against us. Dr. Reeves studied the code structure. Sarah, this level of sophistication suggests months of preparation. How could they have embedded this so deeply without detection? Because they had help from someone with administrative privileges, Sarah replied, her voice grim. Someone who understood our systems well enough to hide malicious code in plain sight. Agent Rodriguez looked up from his communication device. Are you saying there's another insider besides Amanda Foster? Sarah paused her typing, her photographic memory processing thousands of data points simultaneously. Agent Rodriguez, Amanda was just the information source. This code required someone with much deeper system access, someone who could modify core infrastructure protocols without triggering security alerts. The implications hung heavy in the air. If Sarah was correct, Data Vault had been compromised at the highest levels for months. Dr. Reeves, Sarah continued, I need to check something. Can you pull up the modification logs for our core security protocols over the past 6 months? As Dr. Reeves accessed the requested files, Sarah's mind was racing through possibilities. The destruction protocol wasn't just sophisticated, it was intimate. Whoever had planted it knew Data Vault systems like they'd helped design them. Here are the logs, Dr. Reeves announced, displaying the data on a secondary monitor. Sarah's eyes scanned the entries with inhuman speed. There, September 15th, October 22nd, November 3rd, and December 1st. Each time, minor modifications to core protocols, all authorized by the same administrative account. Whose account? Agent Rodriguez demanded. Executive Administrator DT7, Sarah read. That's... She stopped, her face paling as the realization hit her. That's Derek's administrative account, Jennifer finished, her voice barely a whisper. The room erupted in shocked voices, but Agent Rodriguez immediately grabbed his radio. All units, I need an immediate location on Derek Thompson. Consider him a person of interest in a federal cybercrime investigation. Dr. Reeves was staring at the modification logs in disbelief. Derek has been sabotaging our own systems for months. But why? Sarah's mind was already piecing together the larger picture. It wasn't just sabotage, it was preparation. Derek knew this attack was coming because he helped plan it. But he seemed genuinely surprised when the breach occurred, Jennifer protested. No, Sarah corrected. He seemed surprised that I detected it so quickly. Look at his behavior pattern. He consistently dismissed my warnings, delayed proper response protocols, and tried to handle everything internally to avoid outside scrutiny. Agent Rodriguez's radio crackled with an urgent response. Sir, Derek Thompson just accessed the building's executive parking garage. Security cameras show him loading equipment into a vehicle. Equipment? Dr. Reeves asked sharply. Servers, external drives, and what appears to be backup hardware, came the response. Sarah's typing became more frantic. He's stealing the core backup systems. If he succeeds, even if we stop the destruction protocol, Data Vault won't be able to recover its critical data. Can you prevent the data transfer? Agent Rodriguez asked. I can try, but I need to trace his access route through the network. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard as she navigated through Data Vault's complex infrastructure. There. He's accessing the backup systems remotely while physically stealing the hardware. He's covering all his bases. Dr. Reeves was coordinating with building security through her phone. Security teams are en route to the parking garage, but Derek has a significant head start. Agent Rodriguez received another radio update. Sir, we've lost sight of Thompson's vehicle. He's no longer in the building. But Sarah was discovering something even more disturbing as she traced Derek's network activities. Dr. Reeves, look at this. Derek hasn't just been modifying our systems. He's been creating detailed architectural maps of our entire network infrastructure. She displayed Derek's file directory on the main screen. Hundreds of documents containing system diagrams, security protocols, client databases, and personnel records. He's been building a complete intelligence package, Agent Rodriguez observed grimly. This goes far beyond simple corporate espionage. Jennifer was reviewing Derek's recent communications logs. Sarah, look at these encrypted messages from Derek's account. They're addressed to external servers, but the encryption is military grade. Sarah's memory immediately identified the encryption signatures. That's RSA 4096 with advanced elliptic curve protocols, the same encryption used by several foreign intelligence agencies. Dr. Reeves sat down heavily. We're not dealing with ordinary cybercriminals. Derek has been operating as a foreign intelligence asset inside our company. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. Derek hadn't just been a bad manager. He'd been a spy, systematically compromising Data Vault's most sensitive systems while positioning himself as the company's protector. Sarah, Agent Rodriguez said urgently, can you determine what specific information Derek has accessed or transmitted? Sarah's fingers moved rapidly across multiple keyboards as she cross-referenced access logs with transmission records. He's been sending regular intelligence reports for the past 8 months. Client lists, security protocols, government contract details, everything. But why trigger this destruction protocol now? Dr. Reeves asked. If he had ongoing access, why destroy his own intelligence source? Sarah paused, considering the question. Because something changed, something that threatened to expose his operation. She began analyzing the timeline of recent events. The destruction protocol was activated immediately after I exposed Amanda's involvement. Derek realized that my investigation capabilities could eventually trace the deeper conspiracy back to him. So he decided to burn everything down rather than risk exposure, Jennifer concluded. Exactly. And with the backup system stolen, Data Vault would be completely destroyed, eliminating any evidence of his activities while providing his handlers with a complete copy of our data. Agent Rodriguez was coordinating with multiple agencies through his communication device. We've issued federal arrest warrants and international alerts, but Derek has at least a 30-minute head start. Dr. Reeves looked at Sarah with growing urgency. Sarah, can you stop the destruction protocol without the backup systems Derek stole? Sarah studied the malicious code still spreading through Data Vault's network. It's possible, but extremely risky. I'd have to manually override each infected system while simultaneously rebuilding the core infrastructure from scratch. How long would that take? Approximately 6 hours of continuous work, assuming no additional complications. We don't have 6 hours, Dr. Reeves said grimly. The destruction protocol will complete its final phase in less than 2 hours. Agent Rodriguez finished his radio communication and turned to the group. I have additional bad news. Derek's vehicle was found abandoned near a private airfield. Airport security confirms that a private jet departed 20 minutes ago with an unknown passenger. He's gone, Jennifer said quietly. But the destruction protocol is still active, Sarah pointed out. Even if Derek escapes, Data Vault will still be destroyed unless we can stop it. Dr. Reeves was reading urgent messages on her tablet. Sarah, I'm getting reports from our other facilities. The attack isn't limited to this location. Derek planted similar destruction protocols in our Boston, Seattle, and Austin offices. The revelation was devastating. Derek hadn't just targeted Data Vault's main headquarters. He'd orchestrated a coordinated attack designed to destroy the entire company simultaneously. How many people know about your memory capabilities? Agent Rodriguez asked suddenly. Just the people in this room, plus CEO Blackwood and whoever Derek might have told his handlers, Sarah replied. Then you're in danger, Rodriguez said bluntly. If Derek's foreign intelligence contacts learn about your abilities, you'll become a high-value target for recruitment or elimination. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She'd been so focused on saving Data Vault that she hadn't considered the personal implications of revealing her capabilities. Agent Rodriguez is right, Dr. Reeves agreed. Sarah, your memory makes you potentially the most valuable cybersecurity asset in the country. Foreign intelligence services would do anything to acquire or neutralize that capability. Jennifer looked around the room nervously. So what do we do? We can't just abandon Data Vault, but we can't put Sarah at risk either. Agent Rodriguez made a decision. Dr. Reeves, I'm placing Sarah in federal protective custody effective immediately. We'll continue working on stopping the destruction protocol, but her safety takes priority. No, Sarah said firmly. I'm not running from this. Derek and his accomplices have spent months destroying everything Data Vault built. I'm not going to let them win. Sarah, this isn't about winning anymore, Dr. Reeves said gently. This is about survival, both yours and the company's. But as they debated Sarah's fate, alarms began blaring throughout the building. New breach alerts flashed across every monitor, more urgent than anything they'd seen before. The hackers had launched their final assault. The final assault was unlike anything in cybersecurity history. Instead of trying to steal data or plant malicious code, the hackers were attempting to physically destroy Data Vault's servers by overloading their cooling systems and causing catastrophic hardware failures. Temperature readings are spiking across all server farms, Dr. Reeves announced, her voice tight with panic. They're forcing our systems to run at maximum capacity while disabling all safety protocols. Sarah watched in horror as the building's fire suppression systems activated, triggered by the extreme heat being generated in the server rooms. If the physical hardware was destroyed, no amount of code repair could save Data Vault's data. How long before critical system failure? Agent Rodriguez demanded. Maybe 15 minutes, Dr. Reeves replied. After that, we'll have permanent hardware damage that's impossible to recover from. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. The hackers had planned this perfectly. A final scorched earth attack that would eliminate all evidence while ensuring Data Vault's complete destruction. But there was something about their approach that didn't add up. Dr. Reeves, show me the server overload patterns, Sarah requested. As the data appeared on screen, Sarah's photographic memory began processing the information at superhuman speed. Within seconds, she'd identified something crucial. They're not trying to destroy everything, she announced. Look at the pattern. They're selectively targeting servers that contain client data while preserving the core infrastructure systems. Jennifer looked up from her diagnostic station. Why would they preserve infrastructure if they're trying to destroy the company? Because someone still needs access to Data Vault systems after the company collapses, Sarah realized. Derek and his handlers aren't just destroying Data Vault, they're preparing to take control of it. Agent Rodriguez was coordinating with multiple teams through his radio. Sarah, explain what you mean. Think about it. Data Vault has contracts with hundreds of major corporations and government agencies. If the company appears to suffer a catastrophic cyber attack, Derek's associates could swoop in as, quote, emergency consultants to help rebuild the systems. They'd have legitimate access to every client's most sensitive data. Dr. Reeves stared at Sarah in amazement. It's not just espionage. It's a hostile takeover disguised as a rescue operation. The scope of the conspiracy was breathtaking. Derek hadn't just been stealing information. He'd been orchestrating the systematic destruction and reconstruction of one of America's most important cybersecurity companies. "Sarah," Agent Rodriguez said urgently, "if you're right, can we use this knowledge to stop the attack?" Sarah was already moving toward the master terminal. "If they need to preserve core infrastructure, that means they can't completely destroy the network protocols I've been using. I can exploit their own preservation requirements against them." "How?" Dr. Reeves asked. "By turning their selective destruction into a trap," Sarah explained, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'm going to make them think they've succeeded in destroying the client data while actually preserving it in hidden partitions." Jennifer watched Sarah's work with growing understanding. "You're creating decoy destruction protocols that will fool their monitoring systems." "Exactly. While their systems think they're successfully destroying client databases, I'm actually moving the data to secure partitions that their scanners can't detect." Agent Rodriguez received an urgent radio communication. "Sarah, we have a problem. Federal surveillance has detected Derek's aircraft landing at a military airfield in Virginia. He's not fleeing the country. He's coming back." The news sent a chill through the room. Derek's return could only mean one thing. He was confident that Data Vault's destruction was inevitable, and he was positioning himself for the next phase of the operation. "Dr. Reeves," Sarah said without looking up from her work, "I need you to contact CEO Blackwood immediately. Derek is going to approach Data Vault's board of directors with an emergency reconstruction proposal within the next few hours." "How could you possibly know that?" Dr. Reeves asked. "Because that's what I would do if I were orchestrating this operation," Sarah replied. "Create a crisis, position yourself as the only solution, then profit from the reconstruction while maintaining ongoing access to sensitive data." Dr. Reeves was already dialing Blackwood's emergency number. "Robert, it's Helen. We have a critical situation. Yes, Derek is a foreign intelligence operative. No, you cannot trust any reconstruction proposals he makes." Meanwhile, Sarah's decoy protocols were having their intended effect. The hacker attack systems were reporting successful data destruction, causing them to shift focus away from the client databases she was secretly preserving. But as she worked, Sarah noticed something troubling in the network traffic. "Jennifer, look at these transmission logs. Someone is monitoring our conversation in real time." Jennifer checked her security scanners. "That's impossible. This room is supposed to be isolated from external networks." Sarah's memory immediately identified the source. The federal monitoring equipment that Agent Rodriguez's team installed. It's not just recording us. It's transmitting our conversations to an external relay. Agent Rodriguez looked confused. "That's standard protocol for federal investigations. The transmissions go to FBI headquarters for analysis." "No," Sarah said, her voice growing urgent. "I'm tracing the actual transmission route. This data is being routed through 3 intermediate servers before reaching its final destination. That's not standard FBI protocol. That's intelligence laundering." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. The FBI equipment wasn't just monitoring the investigation, it was feeding information directly to Derek's handlers. Agent Rodriguez grabbed his radio with a growing alarm. "Control, this is Rodriguez. I need immediate verification of monitoring equipment, serial numbers, and transmission protocols." While Rodriguez attempted to contact his superiors, Sarah made a disturbing discovery. "Dr. Reeves, according to these logs, Derek has been receiving real-time updates on our progress for the past 3 hours. He knows exactly what we're doing." "Which means he knows about your memory capabilities," Jennifer said quietly. "And he knows that you've successfully preserved most of Data Vault's client data," Dr. Reeves added. Agent Rodriguez finished his radio communication with a grim expression. "We have a problem. The monitoring equipment was installed by a team that doesn't exist in FBI records. Someone used forged credentials to place surveillance devices in this room." Sarah felt the walls closing in around them. Derek's operation is more sophisticated than we realized. They've been monitoring and manipulating our response from the beginning. Sarah, Dr. Reeves said urgently, if Derek knows you've saved the client data, he'll find a way to access or destroy your preservation protocols. Not if I change the game completely, Sarah replied, her mind racing through possibilities. She began typing with renewed intensity, implementing something far more ambitious than data preservation. I'm not just saving Data Vault's data, I'm creating a comprehensive record of Derek's entire operation. What do you mean? Agent Rodriguez asked. Every modification Derek made to our systems, every transmission to his handlers, every piece of evidence of foreign intelligence involvement, I'm compiling it all into an unbreakable testimony archive. Jennifer watched Sarah's work with amazement. You're creating a permanent record that no one can delete or modify. Exactly. Even if Derek's team gains physical control of Data Vault systems, they won't be able to eliminate the evidence of their own crimes. But as Sarah worked to complete her evidence archive, the building's security alarms began blaring with a new urgency. Through the reinforced windows, they could see federal vehicles surrounding the building. Agent Rodriguez's radio crackled with an ominous message. All personnel in Conference Room Alpha are to cease current activities and prepare for immediate evacuation. Federal agents are en route to your location. That's not my team, Rodriguez said grimly. Someone is using federal authority to shut down our operation. Dr. Reeves looked at Sarah with growing desperation. How long do you need to complete the evidence archive? 7 more minutes, Sarah replied, her typing becoming more frantic. We don't have 7 minutes, Rodriguez said, hearing heavy footsteps in the corridor outside. Jennifer moved to the door and engaged the electronic lock. Sarah, whatever you're going to do it now. The footsteps stopped outside their door, followed by the sound of electronic equipment being activated. Someone was attempting to override their security lock. Sarah, Dr. Reeves said quietly, no matter what happens next, know that you've already saved this company and possibly prevented a major intelligence catastrophe. Sarah's fingers moved faster than ever as she raced to complete her evidence compilation. Outside, she could hear voices coordinating their entry into the room. With 30 seconds remaining on her upload, the door burst open. Derek Thompson walked into the room, flanked by 6 individuals in federal agent attire, his face wearing a confident smile that Sarah had never seen before. Hello, everyone, Derek said calmly. I believe we have some unfinished business to discuss. Derek's confident smile faltered slightly when he noticed Sarah's fingers still moving across the keyboard, even as his fake federal agents aimed their weapons at the group. Step away from the terminal, Sarah, Derek commanded, his voice carrying an authority she'd never heard before. Your little game is over. Actually, Sarah said without stopping her typing, it's just beginning. Derek gestured to one of his men, who moved towards Sarah, but before he could reach her, Agent Rodriguez stepped forward. Derek, or whoever you really are, you're making a serious mistake, Rodriguez said calmly. The real FBI has been tracking your operation for weeks. Those aren't federal agents. They're private military contractors. Derek laughed. Agent Rodriguez, I'm afraid you're the one who's been played. Check your communication device. Rodriguez glanced at his radio, which was displaying a message that made his face go pale. Agent Rodriguez, you are hereby relieved of duty pending investigation into security breaches. Cease all current activities immediately. You see, Derek explained, your own agency believes you've been compromised. My associates have spent considerable effort ensuring that your credibility is questionable. Dr. Reeves stepped closer to Sarah's workstation. Derek, what do you really want? You've already stolen our backup systems and sabotaged our infrastructure. Why come back? Because Sarah here has something that doesn't belong to her, Derek replied. That remarkable memory of hers has absorbed classified information from dozens of government contractors. Information that could be extremely valuable to the right buyers. Sarah finally looked up from her keyboard, her expression serene despite the weapons pointed at her. Derek, you're absolutely right. My memory does contain classified information. All of it. Which is why you're coming with us, Derek said. Your government has decided that your capabilities are too dangerous to remain in civilian hands. He plays politics better than the rest of us, Jennifer had confided to Sarah one evening as they worked late. Amanda's good at it too. They know how to make themselves look indispensable to upper management. Sarah had also begun to notice that certain high-security projects were handled exclusively by Derek and Amanda, even when other team members might be better qualified. These projects often involved the most prestigious clients and came with significant bonuses. The company's CEO, Robert Blackwood, was a demanding perfectionist who'd built Data Vault from nothing into a billion-dollar company. He trusted Derek implicitly, largely because Derek always delivered results and never admitted to problems unless he already had solutions. Sarah suspected that Derek might be taking credit for other people's work, but she couldn't prove it. She'd started keeping detailed notes of her suggestions and observations, documenting the times when her ideas were implemented without acknowledgement. Everything changed on a Friday afternoon in November. Sarah was reviewing security logs when she noticed unusual access patterns from multiple client accounts. The intrusion was subtle, almost elegant in its approach, but her memory allowed her to spot the tiny anomalies that others would miss. She immediately reported her findings to Derek, explaining how the attackers had exploited a vulnerability in the Peterson Group's authentication system, the same system she'd warned about months earlier. Derek's face had gone pale as he reviewed her evidence. "How bad is it?" "They've accessed preliminary data from about 50 clients, but they haven't penetrated the core systems yet," Sarah had explained. "If we act now, we can contain it." But Derek had made a crucial decision that would change everything. Instead of immediately reporting the breach to management and clients, he'd decided to try handling it quietly to avoid embarrassing the company. "We can fix this internally," he'd told the team. "No need to panic everyone over what might turn out to be nothing." Amanda had supported his decision, arguing that a public disclosure would damage Data Vault's reputation unnecessarily. Jennifer had looked skeptical but hadn't spoken up. Sarah had felt a growing sense of dread as she watched Derek and Amanda work to contain the breach without following proper protocols. They were more concerned with covering their tracks than securing the systems. By the time Sarah arrived at work Monday morning, the situation had deteriorated catastrophically. The attackers had used their initial access to plant deeper intrusions, and now they were systematically extracting data from Data Vault's most sensitive clients. The security alarms were blaring, and CEO Robert Blackwood was furious. He'd discovered the breach when a client called to report suspicious activity in their accounts. "Who knew about this and when?" Blackwood had demanded during an emergency meeting. Derek had thrown Sarah under the bus without hesitation. Sarah identified some anomalies on Friday, but she said they weren't serious. "We're investigating whether her inexperience led to a misassessment of the threat level." Sarah had stared at him in shock. Amanda had nodded supportively, while Jennifer had looked uncomfortable but remained silent. "I specifically warned that this was a serious breach," Sarah had protested. "I recommended immediate disclosure and containment protocols." "That's not how I remember it," Derek had replied smoothly. "But regardless, we need to focus on solutions now, not blame." As the meeting continued, Sarah realized that Derek was positioning himself as the hero who would save the company, while painting her as the scapegoat whose incompetence had allowed the breach to worsen. But Sarah had something Derek didn't know about, something that would change everything. She had a perfect memory of every access code, every security protocol, and every system configuration in the entire Data Vault network. And she was about to prove that her weird memory was about to become their salvation. The real story was just beginning. 6 months later, Sarah Chen stood before a joint session of Congress, addressing the House and Senate Intelligence Committees about cybersecurity reform. Her testimony had already led to the identification and capture of 12 additional foreign operatives embedded in American tech companies. "Members of Congress," Sarah concluded her presentation, "the threat to our digital infrastructure isn't just external. It's the person sitting in the next cubicle, the supervisor who dismisses security concerns, or the contractor who has access to classified systems. My memory allowed me to detect patterns that others missed, but every cybersecurity professional should be trained to recognize these indicators." After her testimony, Sarah returned to Data Vault's rebuilt headquarters in downtown Seattle. The company had not only survived the attack, but had emerged as the premier cybersecurity firm in the country. Government agencies and Fortune 500 companies now compete for Data Vault services. Dr. Reeves, who had been promoted to CEO after Robert Blackwood's retirement, greeted Sarah in her new office. "How did the congressional testimony go?" "Better than expected," Sarah replied. "They're implementing the surveillance detection protocols we developed, and they've approved funding for the National Cybersecurity Training Program. Jennifer knocked on the office door, carrying a stack of files. She'd been promoted to Chief Technology Officer and had become Sarah's closest collaborator. "Sarah, we've received authorization requests from the Department of Defense, NSA, and CIA," Jennifer announced. "They want to implement your memory-based threat detection system across all classified networks." Sarah reviewed the requests with mixed feelings. Her extraordinary abilities had made her one of the most sought-after professionals in cybersecurity, but she'd learned to be cautious about who she trusted with her capabilities. "Jennifer, what's your assessment of these agencies' security protocols?" "Much better than 6 months ago," Jennifer replied. "Your testimony led to comprehensive reforms in personnel screening and insider threat detection." Agent Rodriguez, who had been cleared of all suspicions and promoted within the FBI, joined them for their weekly security briefing. "Sarah, I have an update on the Volkov network," he announced. "The evidence you compiled has led to the identification and arrest of 47 foreign operatives across 12 countries. It's the largest counterintelligence success in decades." "Any word on Volkov himself?" Dr. Reeves asked. "He's been sentenced to life in federal prison," Rodriguez replied. "But more importantly, his capture led to the dismantling of an entire spy network that had been operating for over a decade." Sarah looked out her office window at the Seattle skyline. The past 6 months had transformed her from an underestimated junior analyst into one of the most important figures in American cybersecurity. But the recognition she valued most came from her colleagues who had learned to appreciate, rather than fear, her unique abilities. "Dr. Reeves," Sarah said, "I've been thinking about establishing a training program for people with exceptional memory capabilities. There might be others like me who could contribute to national security if they received proper guidance." "That's a brilliant idea," Dr. Reeves agreed. "We could call it the Enhanced Cognitive Security Initiative." Jennifer smiled. "Sarah, remember when Derek said your memory made people uncomfortable?" "I remember everything, Jennifer," Sarah replied with a slight grin, "including Derek's exact words. You can't have a normal interaction with someone who recalls every word you've ever said to them." "Well," Agent Rodriguez observed, "it turns out that abnormal capabilities are exactly what we needed to protect the country." As the meeting concluded, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She'd gone from hiding her abilities to using them to save her company and protect national security. The people who had once laughed at her memory now sought her expertise to defend America's digital infrastructure. Her phone buzzed with a message from CEO Blackwood, who was enjoying retirement but still followed DataVault's progress. "Sarah, saw your congressional testimony on the news. Magnificent work. The company and the country are lucky to have you." Sarah typed a brief response. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. I'm exactly where I belong." She had finally found a place where her extraordinary memory wasn't a liability to be hidden, but an asset to be celebrated. And as she prepared for another day of protecting the digital systems that connected the world, Sarah Chen knew that she would never again let anyone make her feel ashamed of being exceptional. The girl they had once laughed at for remembering too much had become the woman who remembered everything they needed to survive. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.